The Rebel South. Good entry from Irish, which for shall not be infringed, it's pronounced Hibernia Sun. Hibernia Sun. Say it with me. um, Irish present. He studied the Civil War, and and he presented this dissertation of a writing. What was it? A justice to a senator about opposing the imparting of abolitionists and things like that. I mean, from a person of that time. Throughout all of it, all I can think of is poor Southern boys, which the average resident of the South was, I don't want to say living in poverty, but the average person in the South was not necessarily a landowner, most definitely not a slave owner. And I challenge the question of the men who fought in the Civil War for state sovereignty. How many of those men, by percentage, were slave owners? And what were the slave owners doing? Well, those good old country boys, who odds on would be standing there picking cotton next to their black counterparts, and continue to do so to this day, figuratively, went off to die for the interests of the elite. The war was sold to them as, from everything of this is your home, this is an issue of state sovereignty, a state being able to decide what it can decide, to them Yankee boys, they can't fight like we can, they can't beat us. Good old fashioned Bowdy House rhetoric, bunkhouse bunkhouse chest thumping. And then besides, you know what? This war is going to be over by Christmas. We'll show them. We're going to march on up to Pennsylvania. We're going to kick old Lincoln right in the teeth. Them boys couldn't show you Pennsylvania on a map. You come home with only one arm now, only one leg now, after your noble fight for state sovereignty. uh, it's a bad example, people. It's a bad example. I think when Andrew Jackson was talking about preserving the Union, he didn't mean so in a fashion of you preserve the Union at the compromise of things such as state sovereignty or something like abolition or whatever. He was one of the largest slave owners, if not the premier slave owner of the West. Tennessee being the West at that time. Abolition things were one purpose, and it's something that really got people's hackles up, especially if you were a slave owner. I don't see them really giving a shit about the Southern economy as a altruistic preserving thing. What the man who owned that land understood was he had a leveraged position with this. You buy labor one time, and you know what? You want to see what type of person it took to buy a slave? Price one out. Run a Google search on it. How much did a slave cost back then? They weren't cheap. It wasn't the average person who could buy one. It wasn't even the middle class person who could buy one. It was an upper class commodity, a very precious commodity. Now, the reason why I bring this up is there were events that happened, like one of the South's cash crops was cotton, if not the biggest cash crop. Well, the clothing that they produced for slaves to wear was produced by imported cotton, which could be imported at a less expensive rate, at a less expensive cost. So the I don't know if it was the cotton itself or the actual clothing. When they re-imported the clothing, there was a levy voted for and passed against that importation of the clothing for the slaves, like what the material that would traditionally be used to dress them up. And these are just one thing after another that we're getting the hackles of these Southern interests up in a bunch that decide for them to stand in a room and say, yeah, we're going to go ahead. We're going to. What did they think? What did they think was going to happen? Hmm? Did they think the Northern Union would allow its agricultural base to depart? You gotta. I'm just looking at the consequences here. Did they think they had a shot? Their only shot was an alliance with France, and France was very cautious in how they conducted their alliance. My problem is with this talk of freedom, and specifically in this case, the Southern Rebellion. You get a select few calling the shots for a bunch of people that don't even know what the heck's going on. That's not freedom for those people, is it?